So today we're going to review anonymously the drawings that were submitted by the deadline today. If you received an email reminder this morning in your UVI email inbox that states, hey, this is you still haven't submitted, you have until 11:59 p.m. to get this in, or a 0 will post for this assignment. This is one of those few times where we absolutely have to have everybody in place and have everything ready to go. And there were a couple of students that either forgot or, weren't present on Monday and didn't know. But what you're about to see are a series of drawings. Now, the folks who did not submit, we're going to have this recording online, and those individuals who have not yet submitted may not duplicate any of the drawings that are seen. So they got to become that much more creative to come up with a simple option, right? And that's one reason why we wanted everybody to get this in. So I hope you understand the dynamic here. We're not trying to be unfair. We just can't. This is not like a team project where somebody does all the heavy lifting and everybody else gets to enjoy the accolades. That's not going to happen here. Not in this module. And everybody needs to have their own unique drawing. Now, we may have duplicate designs or very similar or analogous designs, meaning, the placement of one of the components is a little different in one drawing than another. So what we're going to do is queue up the 10 samples of drawings we've collected to date, and then review each one, and then basically share observations about the drawings. So these are the 4 criteria that have to be met, and there's a half point awarded for each. You have to utilize 2 different basic components and or not. You may not connect 2 of the same logic gates together. You must avoid use of a standard NOR or NAND that flips the output of an OR or an AND. This was shown in class on Monday, okay? The diagram must be legible and neat, including correct shapes with labeled inputs and outputs. And at least one of the connections must show an output that feeds into another input, and that must be labeled W1. So we want everybody to get into the habit of thinking, when you connect logic gates, basic logic gates, and ORs and NOTs together, where outputs feed or lead into the input of the next logic gate, that you have to label that connection, that wire, that pin, and those terms are synonymous, right? Connection, wire, or pin. You have to have some kind of label for it, and the author uses the convention W1, and this is just handy for the time being. I said an extension of this deadline is not possible. We'll review each anonymously in class on Wednesday before a review of the Module 2 solution criteria. You may not copy the same example shown in class of a NOT OR. So when we have a previous recording of that, nobody's copying my work either. Now, once again, if you received a notice and it's a reminder, hey, we need your drawing, after we review all of the 10 drawings, you got to come up with something different if you're one of those that received the reminder notice just this morning. Any questions before we start this?
Yeah, no questions. I just wanted to say that I haven't had internet for like the entire week since the tropical storm, and I didn't receive that email, but I'll make sure I get it done.
I understand. That's why I'm giving folks until 11:59 p.m. tonight, even though I said we won't have an extension. Okay. So
okay, thank you.
I do get it, and I get that for some it was not, a conscious decision or an unconscious decision to just be neglectful. I understand that. So there have been extenuating circumstances, but we need to move forward. You'll notice a second assignment that's due 10 a.m. Friday. So before we kick off our solution review on Friday, I want you to practice working truth tables, functions, canonicals, logical statements. And so there's a Word document here that's basically a simple, let's look at this. So I'm going to download this. So you can see this. Everybody can see this. So what I'm doing is turning off the unprintable features. So here is a function that involves inputs A and B, and it's bar A and B, right? So we have a scenario that's similar to the one we've reviewed in class. I want you to create a truth table and, compile a solution for the canonical expressions. And that's what we need. There's 1, 2, 3 separate problems. They get a little more complex with each one. This one's actually simpler. Remember that you have an order of operations. You have to perform some things before others. So you're going to want to work the table to calculate the output here first before you take that output and calculate it with this. Everybody understands what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. You have 2 different methods to alter your truth tables, and truth tables are available in Blackboard in is it references? Notes and examples, might be in resources. Yep, it's in notes and examples. So there's a 2-input truth table with not using Greek characters, and a 3-input truth table used with reverse canonical. So you have some things in. I'll put some templates out there too. If we don't, let's see if we have that in resources. Templates. Yeah, you want to start with 2-input and 3-input. If you're going to use extra columns for cases where you have to insert columns and you don't want to do that, if you have like a 2-input truth table you need to build, but the reality is you're going to have intermediate steps, you can basically use a 3-input blank truth table. For the last, the second and third, you have 3 inputs, but you're going to have intermediate steps, so you can use a 4-input table if that's the route you want to go. If you'd rather go ahead and work down the column and then highlight and bold the intermediate values, that's another way of doing it. We've demonstrated that, and that's in recordings from last week. Any questions about the 2.2 assignment that's due on 10 a.m. Friday? So we'll review the solutions for those on Friday, and then we'll review what's necessary for your solution, and you will need the time between now and Friday to revise any drawings, and you will need the time between now and Friday to practice with truth tables and canonicals and all that. Okay. So I get excited when I work this, because I find now, when I go ahead and start viewing this, what we may find is that a name is on there, right? So we're going to try to look at the diagram without looking at the name. I'm going to try to zoom in. So in each case, I'm going to display the diagram and then position the diagram, and then I may need to stop sharing and stop recording. Everybody understand?
Yeah.
Okay, because we don't want anybody that gets very self-conscious about, some people are great artists and some are more challenged, so I'm going to pause the recording. So can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay. So on the whole, I want to complement every drawing because there are some things that every drawing does correctly. And this shows some basic creativity here. We're taking two different logic gates. So the one criteria is satisfied, right? We have an A and a B input for OR, and then there's an output for OR that feeds into the input of the AND, right? So what we would want to do though is take this W1 and put it here just so it's clear the W1 is a label for the pin. You can put the label for the logic gate itself here inside, right? So you could have OR listed in here and listed in here and the W1 over there. Those are just minor points. So for a first attempt, freehand with a pencil, I would, oh, there is one other thing that I would recommend. This shape is rounded, so that's typical of an AND. This shape doesn't come to a point. It's not sloped where it looks like a rifle bullet. So if I were in a hurry and just looking at the shapes, that's still pretty rounded. So what I'd do is I would erase this and I would come down slope to a point and slope up to a point. That's the only other change I would make. Other than that, this is a fine attempt of a first diagram for a compound logic gate. Would you mind joining me in a short golf clap to commend? Yeah, good job. All right. So what we'll do is stop sharing and pause the recording. So this is a similar view of what appears to be an identical creation, and that happens. So I don't know if you know this, but Sir Isaac Newton innovated mathematics by inventing the calculus. And there was a second individual who simultaneously invented calculus during the same time period. So you have concurrent developments that happen all the time. So, you know, and it's okay to work with other students as long as you're doing like your own independent thing. So I don't want to discourage collaboration between students. You just want to make sure that what you're doing is your own stuff. So let's pretend that two students paired up and they both said, hey, let's create an OR and what would that look like? And they were to kind of walk through that and then each drew their own separate diagrams. Well, that would be appropriate for collaboration and it wouldn't be considered plagiarism if they shared ideas about how to do things. Oh, remember, we got to label the W1. Oh, remember, we got to do so-and-so. Those are things that could happen during the open discourse between two collaborating students. What would be out of bounds would be submitting the same picture for both. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to encourage collaboration, especially when we get into the HDL simulations. When you build virtual chips and virtual digital components, there are going to be some head scratchers along the way. And I want you to feel comfortable collaborating and checking in with each other, especially if you know some of your peers. Now, moving right along, this drawing incorporates the constructive suggestions that the other picture lacked. The one thing I would offer here is that, and this is something that you wouldn't know except by experience, it's typical that when two logic gates are connecting that you label the pin or wire in between with a W1. If it's the last output before you go outside the logic gate, that's not typically labeled separately. That's just considered out. It doesn't hurt to have this W2. And you can still do the HDL that way. And as a practice, it's not a bad practice, but it's just not generally done. And so it's cleaner and more precise to include a label for each pin. I just wanted to comment that the last output of the last logic gate is usually not labeled with a W because it's not connecting to another logic gate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, now again, it does help us more cleanly articulate the HDL statements because instead of having out equals out or output equals output, you have W2 equals output on the very end. So this shape is tapered to look more like a rifle bullet or a funnel, same difference. So it slopes down and then there's more of a point here. So it's distinctly different as a logic gate. So it's easier. This is more rounded. So you can tell people get better drawing these things the more they do it. But I think for a first attempt, this is really a fine job. This is exceptional. Will you join me in a golf clap to acknowledge what our student has submitted? Thank you, thank you. Okay,
Good job.
Yes, question. Oh, good job is what you said. I got you. So there may have been a drawing software package like, let's see, Visio. So Microsoft Visio is available as a part of Office 365 in the Office 365 portal in our My Campus portal. And there is a component or a plugin that does logic gates. And there are other free software packages out on the internet. So this could have been done generically with a drawing software package, or it could have been done with something exclusively designed to do this kind of thing. It's also possible that somebody cut this from a website. So they were looking for different examples and but I don't think that's likely. Let's take a look at what we have. And I would offer this constructive criticism for the individual who did this. Working builds with logic gates is a little tricky at first. And it's best to go ahead and crawl, walk, run. So the intent of this first drawing was to take two different ones, at least two different ones. I applaud the initiative and innovation to include three. It just means that when you get into the solution for this module, you have more, you have a heavier lift to get the job done. You have more parts and there's more to go wrong. And in your first solution, it's generally a good idea to take on a basic example where everybody gets to experience a level of success before we go in there. That said, there are some people that have good instincts about this, and you're going to find them working in an Intel or AMD fabrication facility, pulling down $140,000 in the first 5 years of their employment as an annual salary. So I don't want to dampen anyone's enthusiasm for being ambitious here. I just want to share the caveats that go with that, right? So it's not uncommon for people to get that first solution going and then they can't get it to work and they get frustrated and then some have actually thrown their hands in the air and run screaming from the room. And I'm like, no. When you learn to ride a bike, it's good to do it in stages where you're more independent each time, right? So this is a lot like riding a bike. Okay. Now, it's obvious the shapes have been preserved here, or there's no mistaking that you're dealing with an or that you're dealing with an and, or dealing with a not. And it's very clear and very well organized, and certainly very, very clean. There is one thing here that I would change. This first not has a W1 that feeds into the top input of the AND, which would otherwise be the internal A of the AND. This second W, the second wire or pin, needs to be distinguished differently from W1. So this needs to be labeled W2 instead of W1. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. See, that way the W2 can be fed into the second or lower, that's the small b of the AND here. So the lower input of the AND, if we leave it W1, the HDL simulation software is going to get confused and think, okay, the NOT is fed into here and the NOT is fed into there. So it's going to NOT both the input for A and the input for B. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then it's going to NOT the output over here. So if you wanted to remain consistent with use of that label, you'd say W3, say W1, W2, and then W3. But this is amazing, and I don't usually see, there are usually a couple of students that want to get a little more creative, but I rarely see this level of detail and this much clarity. So well done. Please join me in a short golf clap or a longer golf clap after what this individual did. Okay. All right, we will pause record.
Yes.
So what may have happened is that students read the instructions for the 2.1 assignment, and I said, use two different ones, and, or, and not. And a lot of them were thinking, okay, I'll just do and or. This is a different implementation of the same that we've seen so far, but there is no question that the graphic detail that's rendered by hand is very clear and very precise and easy to discern and meets all of the requirements and constructive criticism. So for somebody who did this by hand with a pencil, he or she nailed it. And you see everything is consistent with what we've mentioned to date. So my compliments. This is an exceptional diagram, and it's going to be very easy to use to build the first simulation compound logic gate. So kudos. Golf clap, please. So some of you may have been thinking, wait a minute, this isn't the same. The other ones we've seen were or and I didn't catch that. So yeah, this is different. It's not the same as the other ones we've seen. Here's another version of the same. So this would meet all the requirements. It would have all the basic elements of an or and, like the other diagrams. Once again, each of the interests that we see here have been, each of the criteria have been met. So we have clearly defined inputs. We have a wire one into the next one. We have a C. The only thing I would do differently is that I would draw this C out a little further, so that if you're trying to distinguish between the internals, the implementation view, kind of have that dotted line around there. That's usually helpful when you're drawing. I would put, I would add an out over here. You can leave the W2, as we said before, so that's a good practice. It's not a bad thing to do that. But I would add out, and I would make this line longer so that on the whole, when you're looking at the interface view of this compound logic gate, it's clear that there's a third input on the outside. Does everybody understand what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
So you would see like a dotted line that goes around, squares this off. You'd see out over here. You could see W2 inside the dotted line, so that's nice. You just want to make sure the C is over there. Excellent job for a quick freehand draw. Golf clap, please. All right. Yeah, I don't want anybody to get less of a golf clap simply because they were the last ones we saw. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing and pause. Okay, so let's look at this together. I see an out label further out, so that's useful. If you drew a dotted line around this thing like here, then that would be more of what I was just talking about. The W1 is clearly shown. The C could be extended out further, right? So apart from extending the C out further, can we tell this is an OR based on the rounded shape?
No, not really.
Not really, okay? So if we could erase this in light pencil, extend it out so that it's out here with a C, and then just make this pointier, you're good to go. Even though this was quick, it was efficient, and it met most criteria of the assignment. So well done. And golf clap, please. We're almost done. I think there was one more that I saw. Okay, so what we have here are pins and what appear to be values. I'm guessing that these are like 0. This is a 0 value fed into the top input, a 1 value fed in. That's what I'm going on here. So this is an OR. If there at least one of the inputs is a 1, then the output is a 1. So I would caution actually feeding the values in to the logic gates on the diagram, because those can change and the outputs have to be consistent with the truth table, right? So I would simply omit the 1s and 0s from this diagram, but the concept is actually pretty good. So if you do the truth table and the canonical and you know what it is that produces the one true result or the one false result, there's no harm in labeling, adding an extra label with those binary values going in. It just happens to be incorrect in this case. We need a pointed shape here for OR. But other than that, W1 is labeled, A, B, and C are labeled. C is extended out here so we can see, and we have output on this side. So this is actually a very creative approach. And except for the shape and making sure that your output, the output shown is accurate, you'd have a 1 coming out of the OR, and it would be fed into the AND. You'd have a 1 going into the lower input for the AND, and you would have an output of the AND. So the rounded shape, pointed shape, remember, OR, you only need 1 input to be true. Any questions about this before we move on? Okay, here is another diagram. So we have an AND and an OR. This is more pointed. This is rounded. There's a W, A and B, W2. The only thing I'd add here is a longer C input, but otherwise, this is an excellent job. And again, the shapes get better as people practice more. So this is an awesome first result here. And we've seen that one. Don't think we've seen this one. Whoops, hold on. Need to rotate that a little more, rotate that a little more, rotate. Have we seen this one already? Don't think we have. It's rounded and it's tapered with a point, or there's W1, there's an output. The scene.
Professor, we can't see the screen.
Oh, okay. Were you not able to see the previous shapes?
Yeah, we saw the other ones, but we didn't see this one.
Okay. Yeah, I think when I was trying to work the menus, they cut off. So the AND is rounded, the OR is tapered with a point, the W1 is labeled, the output is here, The C could be a little longer, but otherwise this is quick but effective in the same manner that the other one got the job done. So I think we've seen everybody now. Yep. We've seen everyone. So for the last three, this looks like same kind of thing of the other diagram, only reversed. And here, not here or there, the taper, the rounded. The only thing that needs to change is W2 and W3. Everybody got that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Excellent work for your first attempt of compound logic gate drawing. For the last 4 or 5 students that we covered quickly, longer, louder golf clap, and we'll close out the class for today. Take care, stay dry. We'll see you Friday at 10. Remember, we need you to finish the assignment 2.2 before the start of class on Friday. All right. Yay! Thank you much. Stay tuned. We'll see you then.